Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is the NFL preview show, and this week we'll be looking at teams, games, exciting matchups, and obviously playoff standings for Week 16 in the National Football League. Joining me, as always, is Joey Clinkscales, former general manager, scout, personnel director. He's done it all. He's been a player, and he's been on the backside of the front office, and he knows his stuff. So does also Brian LeBel, our NCAA and our NFL draft analysis. We'll talk about that and a few other things. Obviously, Week 16. Joey, you're on the road this time. You are not in your usual home there, Nashville. And I'm not at home. I'm on the road. Well, Brian's the only one that seems to be battening down the hatches.
Well, guess what? It's time for a little sun. So we both of us are in places where we can get a little sun. That's for sure.
Well, it was only 80 degrees here in Los Angeles, 81 if you were in a certain part of the so even wearing a long sleeve shirt as I am, the locals weren't doing that today. But what the locals will be doing here in Los Angeles is watching on the Thursday night game. What a matchup we've got. Let's start off with the Thursday game between the Rams and the Seahawks. Both teams are 11-3. This game will be on Prime Video. It is a Thursday 8:15 kick. Rams are favored by 1.5 in Seattle. That's an unusual thing, in my opinion. The way Stafford has been playing, but the way Darnold has been playing, it's not quite a toss-up. But, Joey, give us your thoughts and perspective here on really what may be the game of the week.
Well, yes, I do think this will be the game of the week. It's interesting that the Rams are favored by 1.5, which is not a large amount. However, when you're on the road, if the Rams were at home, this would be like a 3.5 point spread for the Rams. So they're favored by 1. And it's interesting because the Seahawks aren't running the ball great right now. Defensively, they're outstanding. The Rams have had an outstanding defense this year, but the Rams are, they're going to miss Devontae Adams, who has been an integral part of what they do, especially in the red zone. So it'll be interesting. This should be a really, really good game.
Matthew Stafford, of course, leading the Rams. You got Puka, you got Williams, you got everybody that's a part of the lineup. What do the Rams need to do in Seattle with all that noise and the 12th man and all the distractions? Is the running game going to be the most critical part, or is it going to be third down conversions? Obviously, those are important anyways. But in terms of going up there and playing the Ram type of game that they need to, what's the key indicator going up against that Seahawk defense?
Well, I think they have to control the line of scrimmage. That's been the theme all year. You have to control both sides of the ball. Your defensive line have to get pushed back, and your offensive line have to displace guys on the line of scrimmage. So it's key for the Rams to be able to run the ball so they can create play-action passes.
Brian, if we go look at Seattle, the home team at Lumen Field, they're 5th in the league in scoring. They're 2nd in defense in giving up points, 17.3. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of the game, the defense, if it plays well. And they did play for 3 quarters. They played well against the Rams in SoFi just a couple of weeks ago. Give me your perspective on Seattle and what they have to do.
They need to score some touchdowns. I think that's the main thing for them. This is a very Jekyll and Hyde offense. They're able to move the ball each and every week, and JSN is an integral part of what they're doing. But the running game hasn't been consistent. We kind of talked about that last night, and in the red area, you're going to need to get more production from Charbonnet, from Walker. The defense shows up every week, though. I don't think there's been a game where this defense hasn't shown up all season. They've been spectacular. They're going to get a little bit of a break with Devontae Adams being out, but the Rams are kind of by committee now. I know Puka kind of took over the lion's share of the workload. If you look at the numbers, he was spectacular last week once Devontae Adams exited, but Parkinson's been really, really good. The other receivers, Stafford, when he needs to, he can find guys, whether it's in the slot or wherever it might be. The running game has been very consistent for the Rams. So I think if you're Seattle, I think a lot like what they did with Phillip Rivers. You got an older quarterback that doesn't like to move around as much. It doesn't mean he can't, but Stafford would prefer to stay in the pocket. I think you need to get him off his spot, and I think you need to get after it up front and slow down Corum and Kyron Williams, who've had phenomenal, really a month. They've been spectacular. It's been about a 50-50 split in their backfield, and the production is about the same. So Rams are very complete. It's going to be, like Joey mentioned, it's unfortunate you lose Devontae Adams, but they've got a committee guys who can, step up and obviously make up for Adams' absence.
Real quick, Matthew Stafford needs 278 yards to reach 4,000 with 3 games to go. He might get that. That's not the biggest thing about it, but just always been one of those leaders. He's got 37 touchdowns. Here's one thing about the Rams, Brian. You mentioned the Seahawk rushing woes. Rams are 8th in the league in rushing at 126. They got 126 yards a game. Seahawks are 22nd with 113. So there's really only 13-yard per game average difference. Rams are 2nd in points. They're tied for 3rd. So they're just slightly behind the Seahawks in that respect. But is a 10-yard difference between your team rushing and my team rushing on an average with two teams at 8 and 3? Is that going to be much of a difference?
I think it's the consistency, right? I think if you watch the games, you might get Charbonnet or Walker break off a big one at some point, and they kind of make up for it. So if you look at on the stat sheet, obviously you're going to say, okay, the yards are there, but there's not a lot of consistency. The Rams are getting 4 or 5 yards a pop, right? So they're moving the ball consistently every single time Williams or Corum touch the ball. There are weeks where Walker or Charbonnet are averaging less than 2 yards a carry, and it's apparent, and you can see it. Even against Atlanta, they scored 37 points a couple weeks ago against the Falcons. The run game wasn't as consistent. If they want to be a playoff team, especially if they're going to have to go play on the road in some cold weather place, they're going to have to be able to run the football. And, you need a little bit more consistency there. Take some pressure off of Darnold, take some pressure off of JSN, and kind of help the defense, at least keep them rested and prolong some drives.
Joey, before we move on, Darnold has been one of those guys that needs to play big in big games, or else people and the boo birds and all those speculators that are going to be looking at him and going, maybe this doesn't work. Is this going to be one of those types of game? If he plays well enough to win it, will he finally get over the hump and not have to deal with that every week?
I think so. I think this is a big game for Sam Darnold. I think he's played well in spurts this year, but he's played well enough to get the monkey off his back from that standpoint. And I think if you look at in totality what Minnesota has done on their offensive line, you can understand why some of that was happening last year in Minnesota. However, I think Sam will play well. I think he has enough tools around him to play well. Obviously, Jackson Smith-Njigba is a really, really good receiver, one of the top 3 or 4 in our game today. But Sam will play well. Now, this is a big challenge because, again, the Rams' defensive line, they're legit. They're going to come after him with all they have. So this would be a big game for him if he can cut down on the turnovers versus this team. I think that's been the biggest issue in the big games, have been the interception. So if he can play a mistake-free football, I think he'll fare well. But obviously, as I said from the beginning of the season, I'm picking the Rams to win this and win that division.
Before we move on to the next game, real quick, talk about the patience factor. Sometimes I would watch Wayne Gretzky as an Oiler or as an LA King, and there were times where he would have a shot in the first or second period, but he'd wait until the third, waiting for the right time, waiting for the exposure to be perfect defensively where he can take a shot. Is patience going to be a part of the game for Darnold, especially if the Rams develop an early lead or force them to do some things when they're not rushing well anyways, or at least not as good as they could be? Is that going to be a factor, do you think?
Well, I think he needs to be patient, but hurry, if that makes sense, because I think he needs to be patient and do the things that will help them be successful, but they really need to get off to a really good start. So you don't want to make the catastrophic mistakes early because you can't win the game early, but you can certainly lose it early with interceptions and turnovers. So I think if he's patient, he takes what's there and doesn't try to make the big plays. But if they're efficient and if they can control the clock and keep the ball out of the Rams' hand, I think they'll have a chance to be successful.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And was it John Wooden that said be quick, but never in a hurry? There's a difference between the two. All right, this game, will be the Thursday night. We call it the game of the week. It's available on Prime Video, and we hope you enjoy it. Both teams are 11-3. Because of the college football schedule finally being over, and college football will have bowl games extraordinaire. It's the best time of the year, obviously, and there used to be a song about that. There will be games on Saturday for the last couple of weeks of the season, this being one of them. The Eagles will be playing. They go to Washington. That is a 2 o'clock kick on Fox, but at 5:20, so an unusual start here for an NFL game. Soldier Field will be hosting the Green Bay Packers, and they're a 1.5 favorite. Joey, I'll start with you. Packers come into this game, obviously a lot on the line for both teams, first place in the division. It has been a while since since the Chicago Bears are hosting the Green Bay Packers with a playoff implication like this. They're 10-4. They're 5-1 at home. Green Bay 9-4-1. They are 4-2-1 on the road. Give me first and foremost your perspective on this game and where you think this is going to go.
Well, I'll say this: if you had asked me this through halftime of the game last week, I would have told you the Packers were going to come in here and had a really good chance of winning the game. But now, since Micah Parsons is out, that's losing your quarterback of the defense. And what I mean by that is, from a statistical standpoint, Micah had, I believe it was 64 pressures on the year. And when you can do that, you can affect everything else in the secondary, the linebacker play, how corners are playing, because teams have to double you, sometimes triple you, have 6 hands on you instead of 2. So the fact that that's not there anymore, the closest guy to him, I want to say he had 64 pressures, and the next closest guy on his defense had 29 pressures. So that's the biggest number discrepancy of 2 players on the same team in the league. So that going into this game, if you can't put the appropriate amount of pressure on Caleb Williams, I think Chicago has a real chance in this game to come out with a victory.
They are second in the league in rushing, Joey, 151 yards a game. Obviously, when the weather turns cold, you've got weather with rain or sleet or even snow. Running the ball is a critical aspect of it. The Bears have shown all year that they can do it. DeAndre Swift is just 65 yards shy of 1,000. They're 9th in the league in scoring, but 21st against the opponent's scoring at 24 points a game. Is that a difference, that the emotion of this game and beating the Packers and with the Soldier Field crowd and the Bears being back for at least a little while, is that going to be a factor at all?
It should be. I really think that the Bears have to establish the run. That's been the most important part of their game. It's been the most important part of Caleb Williams' development, the fact that they're able to run the ball. So if they can run the ball against the Packers, it will alleviate a lot of pressure from Caleb. And then when they're able to go play action, or when they want to take shots down the field, they have they have enough pieces to win. And the most underrated part of their team right now has been their offensive line, that retool offensive line, who's given Caleb a lot of freedom to be able to make some of the spectacular plays that he's made this season.
Brian, let's take a look at the Packers. This game rematch from just a couple of weeks ago. Green Bay is 12th in the league in passing. They're 18th. They get 117 yards on average. They're 10th in scoring. They're 8th in defense, in points allowed. Packers aren't going to thrill you, but their numbers speak that they should be at least eligible for the playoffs. I think the number and the record is better than what the statistics say. Prove me wrong.
Packers are an interesting team. There are weeks where Josh Jacobs will carry the load and he'll be the main wrecking ball in offense. And over the last month and a half, Jordan Love has kind of come into his own, right? You've seen that. He's definitely kind of gotten more comfortable. The problem that he had was his go-to guy in the beginning of the season was Robert Kraft, and he goes down, right? So then they kind of got to figure it out, and they got to figure out who the go-to guy is. And then Christian Watson comes back, and he's the go-to guy, and the offense starts humming again, and now he's out. So, listen, I need Golden to step up. I need Dobbs to step up. I need somebody to step up on this receiving core and say, hey, I could fill the void. I can help alleviate some of the pressure off the run game. I think Green Bay is going to have to do a lot like what Joey said. They're going to have to run the ball. I think they're going to have to establish that, try to eat some clock, and avoid turnovers, because this is a very opportunistic Bears defense. They're very good at getting the ball out, whether it's a fumble, an interception. They thrive on that. They're not tremendously abrasive on defense, but they bend, they don't break, and they're very opportunistic. And the Packers are going to have to avoid falling into that trap. I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of a low-scoring slugfest kind of game. I know both offenses over the last couple of weeks have played pretty well, and they've not lit up the scoreboard, but they've shown that they can score. So, the weather obviously is a factor. These are two teams playing outdoors, division rivals. I think, like you guys said, the crowd's going to be a factor. The Bears fans are going to be into it. And I think both teams are really going to find out what whether it be a playoff team, whether it be, someone who's going to kind of fall the wayside in this division the last couple of weeks. But if you would have told me, like Joey said, the Packers looked like the overwhelming favorite in this division, in the first half of the game last week, and then with all the injuries, everything that's transpired, gigantic question mark, and the Bears are sitting in the driver's seat and have an opportunity to really put a stranglehold on potentially the second playoff spot in the NFC.
Well, should be a great game, and obviously the rivalry itself speaks for the history of the National Football League, the oldest rivalry. What are they? They've been playing ever since 1776, it seems, and they really like each other, and that's a definite not. They don't. In this game with so much on the line, it could get a little chippy, so we'll see how this turns out. All right, let's look at the next one. Both teams are 7-7. Tampa Bay ends up going to Carolina. Tampa Bay is 4-3 on the road. Carolina is 4-2 at home. This will be one of the more meaningful games. Brian, I'll start with you, that Carolina has hosted in quite a while, to be in this position this late in the season. Winner gets possession of first place.
Yeah, I think this is really going to come down to which team doesn't turn the football over, which team runs the ball. I think the Panthers have a little bit of an advantage. I think their running back room, as of right now, at least, is a little bit healthier. It's a little bit more figured out. But the passing attacks for both of these teams have been, so to say the least. I'll give, I'll pick on the Bucs a little bit more so, just because you go back a couple months. I mean, we were raving on here. We're talking about Baker Mayfield being an MVP candidate and the Bucs in the driver's seat, and maybe they could sneak into the 1 or 2 seed in the NFC playoff picture. But that was a long time ago. It's a much different football team now. The Falcons ran all over them. The Saints had a ton of success running all over them. So I think that's Carolina's bread and butter. I think they're at home. I think it's a huge game for them. I think they're going to try to replicate what those teams have done and had success with. But on the flip side, the Panthers' offenses look really bad as well. It's just not a lot of consistency. Both of these teams are losing to teams like the Saints and the Falcons, and the finish line for a playoff spot in the NFC South crown is in sight, and both seem to be stumbling and unable to find their footing to just cross it and punch their ticket for the postseason.
Brian, you've mentioned that Carolina, if they were playing Atlanta, they'd lead the league in every category.
Yeah.
They scored 30 points against them on both occasions. They're averaging about 11.5 points less than that per average at 18.9. They're 28th in the league in scoring. They're 28th in scoring. Yeah. And they're 14th in terms of their defensive giving up points at 22.6. They rush it. They're 9th in the league with that, but they're passing. Bryce Young, just if it wasn't for Atlanta, he's very mundane and average, right? About 143 a game, 162, 124, 205. I mean, there's not a whole lot there. Is that something that has to change in the next couple of weeks, or are they just going to really rely on the run game?
They've shown that they can win with the run game. I think they play best when they establish the run on early downs, and they're able to have Bryce Young bootleg and playoff play action. And Ted McMillan has been a very, very good player for them this year. He's a rookie. He's been, kind of the alpha in this receiving core, but that's their bread and butter. They got 2 pretty good running backs, and it's been kind of, when they're having success, you've seen the running game take the forefront. I think for both these teams, not just the Panthers, but when the Bucs run the ball well, that's when they have their most success. So I know the passing numbers have been down, but it's complementary football for both of these guys, and I think they just kind of need to establish something, right? Both these teams are reeling. Someone has to win the game. Why not go back to the basics and try to run the ball, chew some clock, and hopefully avoid turnovers, more so for Bryce Young as opposed to Baker Mayfield. Really
kind of average, if you ask me, Joey. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. It's just the numbers are average. They're 203 per game in the air. Baker is 1 yard shy of 3,000. He has 22 touchdowns. They are 21st in the rush at 113. We talked about some of the other teams and where they are with 113, 115, somewhere in that range. They're 16th in scoring. Their defense gives up 25.3 points a game, and that's 24th in the league. Again, both these teams struggling in terms of, who's dominates. They don't. They just don't. But you know what? They're going to win the division. One of them is going to. Real quick, Carolina plays Tampa. They play Seattle, and then they play Tampa again. So kind of a rough schedule for them. If they don't win this one, it's going to be very difficult for them.
Yeah, I think Tampa has more motivation to win, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm sure after the butt chewing that Todd Bowles gave the team, they will come out with renewed vigor in their effort, especially to finish. I think the fact that they have their complete receiving core back will help another game together, I think would be good. And I think that Tampa is one of those teams that they pass to run. I think if they can open up their passing game, then it will help their run game. Some teams do it the other way. Most teams do it the other way. But a lot of teams who have a dynamic passing game will pass to run. And I think that's what Tampa has become as of late, a team that passes to run. But defensively is where they have to play a lot better. And I think if they're going to get well defensively, this is the week for them to do it because Carolina has played really inconsistent football as of late. Not only Bryce Young, but their defense has been inconsistent. They do have a shutdown corner in Horn. They've got a pass rusher over there. And obviously they can their running game has been really inconsistent. Dowdle had some really good games, and then there are other games where he's been really quiet. So It'll be interesting what we see, but I expect Tampa Bay to come out again with renewed vigor and knowing that if they lose this game, that there's a good chance they won't make it in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Well, Bank of America Stadium will host them. Tampa is a 3-point favorite, so obviously the betting force thinks that Tampa is a little bit better than Carolina and have been in this position for a lot longer. That might make a difference. This game again at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Let's look at the next game. We're going to talk about Jacksonville at Denver. This will be a 4:05 kick from Empower Field there at Mile High Stadium. Denver's a 3-point favorite at home, Joey. It's not the spread itself. It's just Denver seems to always, at least this year, consistently find ways to win, whether it be in a close game or one where they have to hold on and just maintain position, move the sticks a little bit, take some time off the clock. Denver's winning. They've got a great defense. Give me your thoughts here on what the Broncos need to do against Jacksonville.
Well, I'm quite frankly surprised that it's only 3 points. And I know Jacksonville is a good team. They're up and coming team. But the way Denver's played this year, I'm really surprised it's just a 3-point advantage. Denver, because again, we're gonna start up front. Denver has the best pass rush defense in the National Football League. They're coming after you all the time. And, Jacksonville, they have played well. They're on a 4 or 5 game winning streak, which is good for them. But they haven't faced a defense like they're about to face in Denver. They haven't been at 5280, as we like to call, that altitude in Denver. So I think this is going to be a major test for Jacksonville. So I'll be curious and interested to see how this plays out during the game. But I think, quite honestly, Jacksonville is going to have a tough time because they're going to leave Jacksonville, and it could very well be 20 degrees in Denver at kickoff, 15 degrees in Denver at kickoff. Now it's Denver, so there's also a slight chance it could be 65 degrees at kickoff. You don't know what you're going to get. However, I would expect the Broncos to win this game.
Yeah, you are going to get one thing, and that's the airs in your lung or lungs will definitely not be what you're used to there at Florida sea level. It's just not going to happen. I promise you that. Brian, Denver is 11th in passing. They're 17th in rushing with 119 yards a game. They're 12th in scoring at 24, but they're 3rd in defense. Joey mentioned that pass rush that they have. They're only giving up an average of 11.3 yards. They're giving up 18.3, and they're tied for 3rd in the league. Defense wins it, especially in playoff time or in December. Why do you like the Broncos? And then tell me what you think the Jacksonville Jaguars need to do in order to pull up an upset there.
Well, unfortunately for the Jaguars, they won't have anybody in the pool, right? Because they're not at home. It's obviously going to be a little different, like you mentioned, with the weather. But listen, this Denver defense is legit. And if they're playing from ahead, which they've done a lot this season, they've had a ton of success. I believe they're undefeated at home. They're able to pin their ears back and get after you. And I think, for Trevor Lawrence's sake, for the offensive line's sake, for Jacksonville, I think they're going to need to avoid that. I think they're going to need to establish the run early. I think they need to probably have a good start. They need to be ahead or somewhere close going into the second half because you don't want to have to play in this altitude when you're going to tire a little bit easier. The crowd's going to get a little more juiced. You're going to really feel it in that 3rd and 4th quarter, like you guys mentioned. It's just I think Denver has so many different ways they can beat you. And it's not necessarily set things like the game against the Giants where they just scored 30 points in the fourth quarter just out of nowhere, right? The offensive explosiveness, they're capable of that. They love to play defense and run the ball first, but these guys just have a ton of talent. I think they have a ton of faith in what they're doing too, right? I don't think there's a single team in the league right now that would line up against these guys and they wouldn't believe that they're better, right? I think they're confident that they can beat anybody. It's kind of the perfect storm because if you look at Jacksonville over the last couple of weeks, they're kind of in the same boat. They're playing some really good football, some really confident football. But, the AFC crown is in sight, especially with the Patriots losing this past week. I think they're going to have a ton of juice at Empower Field over there in Mile High. And I like what the Jaguars are doing. I think, we've talked about it. I need to see more consistency from Trevor Lawrence, and he's given it. But, this is an entirely different animal than what we've seen out of like the Jets, right? He had a great game last week, but this Denver defense is legit. I think they're going to show it again on Sunday. It's going to be tough for a team from Florida to go up there and beat the Broncos in Colorado.
Well, Denver will host. It's a 4:05 Eastern kick. It'll be on Fox, unusual Fox game where you have two AFC teams, but sometimes it works out that way when you sacrifice and don't have a Saturday game or the Thursday night game. Again, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Denver Broncos. Next game we're going to look at, this is a 4:25 kick. This game will be at on CBS, Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan, where the Detroit Lions will end up hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, we'll talk about them in just a moment, both in a position where they've got to win in order to maintain any playoff hope at all, and that would be through winning the division predominantly. There'd be a very slim chance of getting there with the wild card. 8-6 Steelers, 8-6 Detroit Lions. Both teams need a win. Joey, we'll start with you. Give me your thoughts here on this one.
Well, both teams do need a win, and quite frankly, I think the Lions need to win worse than the Steelers because the Steelers will play the Ravens again, and that game will probably determine that division, that conference championship. So I think the Lions need this because the Lions are 2 games back of Chicago right now. They're a game back of a game and a half back from Green Bay. So I think they really need this. If they lose this game, their chances of getting into the playoffs become more slim as the weeks go by because we're running out of games. The Steelers, however, they come off an impressive win versus the Dolphins. They've played well as of late. They're finding some chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, so that's interesting. Now, they will probably still be without T.J. Watt after he had the surgery for the collapsed lung, I believe.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. They can go in here and win. If they can play complementary defense, they'll have a chance, but I expect the Lions to really play motivated, be hungry at home, and, their backs are against the wall. They have to find a way to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. They were 4-1 at one point. Then they win one, lose one, lose one, win one, lose one. That's been the modus operandi. This is really a must-win situation for them. They have the Vikings and the Bears yet left. And Ryan, real quick, they're number 1. The Detroit Lions are in scoring, and they're 23rd in points given up. They're averaging 24.6 points a game. Is that a discrepancy that's a little bit too big? And is it on the wrong side of where it would need for a playoff team? Wouldn't you rather have a top-rated defense and have the offense struggle? What are your thoughts there?
It definitely shows up a little better for you in the score sheet, obviously, when you're giving up fewer points. But I think this team goes as the run game goes, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is, the spearhead of that. Obviously, Montgomery is a complimentary back, and they're fantastic together. But if you look at the games where Gibbs doesn't play well, they don't really win, right? I think a lot of that is because they don't control the line of scrimmage well. They don't chew up clock. They don't run the ball well. And I think it's attributed to them struggling this year. They've had some offensive line issues. I know they've tried to kind of shuffle around. They tried to bring someone back out of retirement. That didn't work. It's not really the Detroit offense we've been used to seeing the last couple of years, right? They've usually been, their bread and butter has been the offensive line, and they can beat you in a variety of ways because of that. But, I saw something, this Pittsburgh defense, they showed some fight. I know obviously it's against a bad Dolphins team, but they looked pretty good on Monday night. It's going to be a short week for them. I'm going to be interested to see what they do because obviously they're probably going to be without TJ Watt again. They're going to have to figure out how to stop Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to have to figure out how to get Jared Goff uncomfortable. They're playing indoors, which obviously isn't to their advantage, right? The Lions kind of spread the field a little bit and try to run. But, this is a really interesting game because it's really going to just depend on what team shows up for both sides, right? The Lions have been kind of Jekyll and Hyde, just as like the Steelers have as well. Their records are, they're a reflection of that. So, Pittsburgh, I think, is going to have to be consistent in the passing game. DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers played well this past week. I think they need to build off of that. And I think they have an opportunity because, like you said, this Lions defense is so-so. They're not really scary. They're not really getting after you. They're giving up a lot of points. I think if Pittsburgh can run the ball and take advantage of that, I think they got a good chance to actually sneak out of Ford Field with the win.
Well, you mentioned Ford Field. They'll be hosting the Lions. Are a 7-point favorite. Again, this is a 4:25 kick, and they'll be on CBS. Final game of the show that we're going to talk about is New England and Baltimore. This one at M&T Stadium. Baltimore is a 3-point favorite. I would think it would be the other way around when you got a 7-7 Baltimore team hosting an 11-3 Patriot team, and Patriots had a close loss against the Buffalo Bills just a few nights ago. This is an 8:20 start. It'll be on NBC. So the Sunday night game of the week will feature the Patriots and Ravens. And Joey, give us your perspective here on these two teams. One is in first place in the East, and one is a game out of second place. Well, they're in second place. They're a game out of first place against the Steelers here in the AFC North.
Well, I'm a bit surprised that the Ravens are favorites, to be quite honest with you. Especially given the level of their play as of late, which has been really up and down. The Patriots are coming off a loss after 8-game winning streak. So I expect them to be motivated going into Baltimore. They're really able to run the ball, and if they can continue running the ball like they've been doing, and Drake May does not make any mistakes on the road, the Ravens defense has been very giving at times to the opponents. So it depends on which Ravens defense show up. And Lamar Jackson, you can tell he's clearly not healthy still. The Lamar Jackson you're going to get in this game will probably be less than 100%. Usually he doesn't practice this time of year until Wednesday or Thursday because of the injuries that he's had. So it'll be interesting. I expect the Patriots to go in and win this game, to be quite honest with you, because the Patriots are a more well-rounded team, offensively, defensively, and on special teams. And I think their defensive lineman who's been out, who was their big free agent signing, will be back this week, and that'll help shore up their defensive line. So I expect the Patriots to go in and win. Yeah,
Patriots will have to stop the run, though, won't they, Brian? Derrick Henry had 100 yards last week. When he needs to run, it seems like he finds that energy here in his 275th year playing in the NFL. He's just amazing. He's still hard to stop. Give me your thoughts here on the New England Patriots and what they need to do to keep pace in the AFC East.
Well, it's interesting for them. They're sitting at 11-3, and they're only half a game up in the division now, right? Because Buffalo got them last week. They're still a game behind Denver. They kind of find themselves in uncharted territory. As the season they've been rolling, right? So it hasn't been a whole lot of adversity, or I would say getting punched in the mouth, which I think in the second half of that game against the Bills they did. And Buffalo, credit to them because they didn't abandon the run game, right? They got behind early, but they kept with it. It worked. That's what Baltimore's going to try to do. I think that's what the betting odds. I think the bookmakers are probably looking at that and saying, hey, this Baltimore team can run the ball. Even on weeks where they struggle, they're able to run the ball. They're able to control the clock. And it's kind of the mantra they used to have with the guys like Manning and with, Breeze and with Brady is, I'm not saying Drake May's at that level of those guys, but the best way to keep him out of the end zone is keep him off the field, right? Control the ball, shorten the game, if you will. And I think that's what Baltimore's going to try to do. They're at home. It's a must-win game for them. There's going to be a lot of juice in the building. I can understand why. Derrick Henry's still an absolute force at the running back position. Lamar Jackson's still a, league MVP. He's still very, very good, even not at 100%. It's going to be interesting for this younger Patriots team to kind of bounce back and kind of respond and see, hey, we're playing a guy who's not Josh Allen, but they play kind of similar, right? They like to use their legs. They'll extend the pocket. They'll extend plays. They could do spectacular things. And they're coming off of a loss, which is, that hasn't happened a lot for them this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. And, Joey talks about all the time. Can they take on the personality of Mike Vrabel? Because Mike Vrabel, being, what he is and what he's gone through as a player, I think he knows how to respond. Hopefully the players can follow suit. I think the Patriots do win this game, but I think Baltimore give a run for their money. And depending on how well Drake May plays, if he turns the ball over once or twice, it could be very interesting. Could be a good Sunday night for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ravens absolutely need it. They have to come up with some wins, especially if Pittsburgh gets another victory. All teams have some struggles ahead of them, but that's what makes it so fun to watch. Hey, before we go, guys, let's take a quick look. We won't even chart it, but San Francisco at the Colts. This will be your December 22nd Monday night game. It'll be on ESPN. It's an 8:15 kick. San Francisco is 10-4, and Joey, I'll just start with you. 10-4 is a great record, but you know what? It's not 11-3, and with tiebreakers being what they are, if they get a win here, obviously with one of the two Ram and Seahawk teams getting a loss, they can get right there where they need to be and move themselves up and possibly end up taking the division. The Colts, on the other hand, at 8-6, if they lose, are they done?
Well, like I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I thought that was the Colts' last victory. I didn't see them winning another game in the 2025 season, and I hold firm to that. I just don't see how the Colts can get it done with the injuries they've had in the secondary, with quarterback being out, and now you're relying on a 44-year quarterback who accounted himself well this past week, but now there's film on tape. There's film on him, so the team playing him this week will know that he can't get away from the center fast enough, or he's slow to make reads, or when you get close to him, he's gonna curl up and fall down. So I don't see how the Colts win this game, to be quite honest with you, especially in the Bay. I think that's where it is. It's on the West Coast, but I expect the 49ers to keep doing what they've done. I mean, they find a way with injuries and everything else to play well, and I think Brock Purdy had his best game of the season this past Sunday. So I expect the 49ers to take care of the Colts.
It is at Lucas Oil, sorry, and 6-1 at home. That the Colts are 6-1 at home. That's obviously one of those distinct advantages. But guess what? San Francisco is 6-2 on the road.
Yeah,
I was surprised to read that. Brian, your thoughts?
It's going to be interesting how Philip Rivers comes off of getting hit, right, and having to actually play and be mobile. There's an interview this week, real quick. Matt Ryan was talking about on CBS. He had an offseason workout with Matthew Stafford, right? And he was throwing the ball around pretty well. He's having a catch for Stafford, which he didn't enjoy. But he said, hey, I felt loose. I was throwing the ball around. I felt pretty good. And I was thinking for a second, hey, maybe I could come back, maybe give it a go. And then that next morning he woke up and he's like, yeah, maybe not, right? The body feels a little bit. And, I don't think Philip Rivers has moved around and played like that in a long time. So I think it's going to be interesting how he plays, having to go through another week of practice against a good defense. San Francisco is still a very good defense. And, like what Joey said, the road ahead for the Colts is they got the Niners, they got the Jaguars, they got the Texans. And that doesn't really bode well for any of those, or for them in any of those weeks. A couple of really good defenses. I think San Francisco's riding high. I think they're getting healthy at the right time. I think they're figuring it out. Brock Purdy had a great week last week. They're running the ball well. I don't see it for the Colts. And like Joe said, I don't see them winning another game the rest of the year either. I think it's kind of done with. And unfortunately for them, they traded their first-round pick this year, so they actually don't have that, which to add insult to injury. So very weird times for the Indianapolis Colts from where they were probably a month or two ago. But the San Francisco team, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to keep rolling.
Yeah, San Francisco, they're in the right place at the right time, at least in my opinion. You guys agree. All right, guys, there we have it. We've looked at 6 of the top games that we think this weekend. Obviously, playoff implications abound with all of them. On Thursday night, you've got LA at Seattle. On Saturday, you've got Green Bay and Chicago. On Sunday, you've got Carolina and Tampa, Jacksonville at Denver. You've got Pittsburgh at Detroit, and then New England at Baltimore being the feature game of the week. So we are grateful for you being a part of the show. You've been watching 100 Yards of Football with Joey Clinkscales and Brian LeBel. And this particular show that you're watching here on our podcast is called the NFL Preview Show, and we've been previewing Week 16. We hope you have a fantastic